All right. Well, hello everybody. I'm glad you guys could jump in and join us here. My name is Bill Hartog. I'm the Ruckus specialist here at Bytespeed. We have Jim Kerr with us as well. He's going to be talking a little bit later in the webinar and doing some E-rate updates and that type of stuff. Kind of what we'll be talking about today is the Ruckus product portfolio coming into the E-rate season, and then also looking at Wi-Fi. If you're looking at Wi-Fi 6E, looking at Wi-Fi 7, some of the considerations you're going to have to make making that jump. And I was just talking to Jim too about, even future Wi-Fi standards and that type of stuff, and kind of what that's going to take and see on those points. So that's kind of what we'll jump into here. And I got a few slides. We'll try to go this quickly. It's just a quick half an hour webinar here. If you do have questions, I got my guy Clever here kind of monitoring those. He will keep those until the kind of the end of my section, and then we'll go through those questions. So if you have any questions, put them into that chat area there, and we'll hit those. Like I said, I'm Bill Hartog. I'm the Ruckus product specialist here at Bytespeed. I'm also a sales engineer for a few of the account managers here. And then Jim Kerr is with us as well. If you've been in the E-rate world, he's a well-known name. So he is here to give us a few updates and take any questions and that type of stuff as well. Just to give you a quick background about Bytespeed itself, most of you are probably familiar with us. Started in 1999. We're based in Moorhead, Minnesota. And we started off doing desktops, laptops, that type of thing. We branched out. We've been a Ruckus partner now for about 10 years or so, getting close to that. So we've been working with Ruckus quite a while. I'm fairly new to the Ruckus specialist position, but I've been a sales engineer for about 5 years or so, so I've been working with it with all that time. We offer not only laptop and desktops, like I said, but we've kind of branched out Ruckus, Juniper, various camera vendors, kind of a whole gamut to give schools and libraries and things like that, kind of everything they're going to need on the IT networking, that type of thing. And then two, just talking about, like I said, we're based out of Moorhead, Minnesota. So anytime you guys have any problems or anything like that, even on our partner products like Ruckus, like Juniper, and those type of, we're always a first line of defense. If you guys would rather talk to us instead of, directly to the vendor, definitely give us a call. We're a US-based company. Literally, I can walk down the hall and talk to almost anyone that you'd be talking to or anything like that. So we're kind of all in one location. We have a few remote people, but again, they're basically within the North Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa area, so all very close together. And we can help with installation. We can do, like, if you're buying Ruckus, for example, we can do pre-configuration where you buy that hardware before it even gets in your hands. We can bring them in. We can work with you on the configuration before the equipment ever lands at your door. We can work on the configuration with you, make sure it's set up, ship it to you, and then all that's required is putting it up. We can help with putting it up if you need to. We have installation services nationwide. And then we can help with any problems that come up after it is deployed, because of course, best laid plans of mice and men, there's always a little bit of problems afterwards. But this is just another slide here about our tech support and all that type of stuff. And the real reason you guys are probably here is to talk about Ruckus, or to listen about Ruckus and possibly some E-rate stuff there. So we'll dive into that here. Looking at the Ruckus product portfolio coming into E-rate, you basically have three different product lines. You're going to have your Wi-Fi 6, your Wi-Fi 6E, and your Wi-Fi 7 product lines. How Ruckus does it is they go by like you can see here under Wi-Fi 6, you have the 300, which is kind of your entry level. The 500 series, which is your better, your R550 in case of Wi-Fi 6, and R650 in case of Wi-Fi, just a little bit bigger, excuse me. And then the R750 is going to be the best size you got there under the Wi-Fi 6. The Wi-Fi 6 portfolio, as you can see, is well filled out, everything running the gamut from entry level to kind of the biggest you can go. And then the Wi-Fi 6E, you can see there you have an R560 or an R760. Those are the Wi-Fi 6E that includes the 6 gigahertz band. Wi-Fi 6E They're not going to fill out that product portfolio anymore. Those are kind of the two options you have for that Wi-Fi 6E. Wi-Fi 7 is already out, so they kind of saw that as a stepping stone. So they just brought out some to fill the major gaps where most people fall, and that's kind of the options that you have for the Wi-Fi 6E. And then Wi-Fi 7 is the brand new stuff, came out within the last year or so. The R770 was one of the first certified Wi-Fi 7 APs, and actually one of the cool things is, if you guys know the Wi-Fi Alliance, the IEEE kind of sets the standard, and then the Wi-Fi Alliance basically tests against that standard to certify APs. The R770 is kind of the golden standard that they use to certify other APs. So the R770 was one of the first, if not the first AP certified, and is the golden standard that the Wi-Fi Alliance uses to certify other devices. And then recently they also came out with the R670, which is one step down from that. And those are the two they have out right now. It will be filled out more. There will be more inclusions in there. An R570 should be coming, and possibly an R370 should be coming. So that will fill out closer to what the Wi-Fi 6 lineup looks like there, but they are not out yet. So this E-rate season, you're just looking at those two units and that type of stuff. Continuing on, the outdoor units, differing options you have for Ruckus coming into E-rate here. The T350 is going to be your Wi-Fi 6, and that's going to kind of be your coverage, right? Where you just need some Wi-Fi out there. You're not looking for super high density or anything like that. You just need some coverage for an outdoor space and that type of stuff. T350 is going to be your go-to for that. If you're looking for high density, the T750 is going to be the one you're going to look for. If you're, even like stadiums, or you're gonna, football stadiums, stuff like that. The T750 might be a good choice in that area if you're looking for Wi-Fi 6 coverage for those type of places. And then the T670 is that just launched as well within the last few months. That will be the only Wi-Fi 7 outdoor AP offered by Ruckus. One consideration that you have to do, and we'll talk about more considerations, but specifically for outdoor Wi-Fi 7 and basically anything going forward using that 6 gigahertz band, is there are still licensed people with the FCC, licensed legacy users of the 6 gigahertz band. They still have FCC licenses promising that that band is just for them in certain areas. So when you're talking about outdoor stuff, the 6 gigahertz band has to check in with a database that is run by CommScope, Ruckus, and the FCC to make sure it's not going to interfere with anyone in the area. So that is additional little configuration, additional little thing that is a consideration for those. Just so you guys know, if you're looking for outdoor deployments of, Wi-Fi 6E, Wi-Fi 7, Wi-Fi, whatever, as the standards increase, if they're going to use that 6 gigahertz band, at least for the time being, until all those 6 gigahertz licenses have expired and are no longer in use, they have to check in with that database, and that's something you have to set up for them to actually utilize the 6 gigahertz band. Talking about switching, Ruckus has quite a big lineup here. If you don't know, years ago, probably 3-4 years ago now, Ruckus and Brocade kind of came together. So Brocade switches became Ruckus switches. So this is kind of continuing that lineup. If you're looking for Wi-Fi 6E or Wi-Fi 7, switches to support those, you're looking basically at the ICX 7150Z series or the ICX 8200 series. And there are reasons for that, and I will go over them when we look at the considerations that you have to make when you're looking at Wi-Fi 7. But for most people, I recommend the ICX 8200. The 7150 is a little bit older series. They're based on their stacking and their uplinks and all that type of stuff. Their fiber connections are SFP plus. 10 gig, they don't go any faster than that. If you do go into the 8200 series, you don't really pay that much more money. And those are SFP 28 standards, so they can go up to 25 gig using the same physical port. It's just electrically different, right? So you would have to get, different cables, different transceivers, and that type of stuff if you're currently running normal SFP plus stuff. but over the same fiber lines, and as long as you change out the transceivers and stuff, you could go up to 25 gig. So those are kind of the bread and butter for the 6E and the Wi-Fi 7. But going up from that, you have the 7550s. Those are good for some extra heavy duty needs, maybe on the access side, or a little bit of aggregation. They do have some fully fiber switches and that type of stuff. If you need a smaller top of rack switch, that's a good one to look at. And the 7850 is the full the full bore aggregation type switch, core switch, those type of things. So that's how that lays out there. Our next one will be talking about the controllers for Ruckus. You have on the left-hand side starting there, you have the Smart Zone. There's the physical appliance or virtual. It comes in two different flavors. So if you're looking at the physical appliance, that's going to be the Smart Zone 144. And then the virtual smart or literally the virtual smart zone is just called the virtual smart zone. That can run in ESXi, VMware, Hyper-V. Those are officially supported. I think some people might be running them in Proxmox now that Hyper-V is excuse me, VMware has kind of done some weird things. But those are the two options for on the smart zone. Those are on-premise devices. You can tie in analytics with those as well. We'll talk about analytics with Ruckus One. But those are options there, physical appliance or virtual appliance for a virtual environment. Moving over to Ruckus One, that is Ruckus's cloud environment. I will say this past E-rate season and just in this off season here coming up, I would say 80+% of schools have been going to Ruckus One for their cloud or for their controller, excuse me. Analytics is tied into it. It comes a part of it. There are two different flavors of Ruckus One. There's Essentials and then there's Professional. If you guys have ever heard of Ruckus Cloud Path, that's going to be one of the differentiators. They are slowly integrating a lot of Cloud Path features into the Ruckus Professional side of things. And also there's longer data retention for your analytics. So for, error reporting, all that type of stuff. Essentials does 30 days. Professional will get you 1 year of data retention so you can go back and look and that type of stuff. Both of them have some nice analytics. Both of them have some cool features. So if you guys are interested in looking at that, we can set up a demo and go through Ruckus One. And then Unleashed is more geared towards small business. Very small schools sometimes use it as well, but basically that's just, Ruckus has an AP would become the master, would be the controller of a site, of a cluster. And, you do all your configuration via one AP. It's pushed out to all the other APs and stuff like that. So no dedicated real controller other than a voted on master AP. And that pushes out configurations to the other APs. And the low-end 7150E switches that we saw on the previous switch only works with Ruckus Unleashed. So that's something to look at too. If you do have maybe a small office space or something, and you're looking at Unleashed, you can get those 7150E switches controlled by Ruckus Unleashed as well. Okay, and then the last big thing I want to talk about here is going to be the power considerations. That's going to be a big issue going forward. Starting in Wi-Fi 6E and now in Wi-Fi 7, we have broken through the PoE plus power threshold. So with Wi-Fi 6, especially the bigger Wi-Fi 6 units like the 4x4 units and that type of stuff, we were butting up against that, that 30 watts, that 25 watts to the actual device, that type of thing. They were right there. Now with the addition of an additional radio to support 6 gigahertz, they are over that. You can see kind of just underneath there, they're drawing 32 watts nominal, and they can pull up to 40 watts in some cases, spiking. So they are over that 25 watt limit to the end point. So PoE plus plus is going to be a major concern or a major consideration if you guys want to go to Wi-Fi 6E, go to Wi-Fi 7. If you look down at that chart there again, you can see that there is an actual option that 802.3 AT 25.5 watts. So if the APs that are 6E, that are 7, detect that they're only able to pull that 25 watts, they will turn some stuff off. They will turn the radios down a little bit, and they will still work. but they won't be broadcasting as strongly. Some of the other, like USB is disabled for one. One of the Ethernet ports might be disabled. The IoT radio might be disabled. Those type of things in order to still facilitate that AP working. So just be aware if you guys are looking at upgrading, are looking at 6E, are looking at 7, you need to do a hard look at what you currently have for switching, the power output of that switching, and then also too, when you're looking at that, I know even when people were talking about Wi-Fi 6 2 years ago, Wi-Fi 6E, it was a big discussion as well, and even when I was talking to Jim earlier, these APs now are able to push so much throughput for them, especially when you're looking at Wi-Fi 7 and future, is a 1 gigabit or a 1 gigabyte backbone going into a switch isn't enough anymore to support how many users they can support, to support the actual throughput that the AP can support. So, for this generation, a multi-gig over copper is kind of what they're pushing. That might not be the same. They might be looking at different fiber configurations or even faster copper configurations. Who knows? But for right now, if you guys are looking at, especially in high density areas, common rooms, maybe libraries, those type of things where you're going to have a lot of people, you're probably going to want a multi-gig link in there. And a lot of those switches, especially on the Ruckus side, that do PoE++ will also support multi-gig connections. At least some of their ports will be multi-gig. So you can get that 2.5 or like 5 or even 10 gig over copper connection as long as the cabling will support it to those APs. So that's some of the big configuration or big considerations there for 6E or 7. If you're outdoor, you have to check in with the FCC, and it does that automatically. Kind of, it'll have a GPS in it. You just have to set it up in order to do that. But when you're talking about your switching, big things to consider: PoE++ power and multi-gig connections to those. Um, Clever, do we have any questions? I think that's kind of it for the Ruckus side of the conversation there.
Nothing in particular, but thanks for outlining that for us here. We also have Jatan, our dedicated support resource from the Ruckus side. I guess I can give him a couple minutes to mention a couple things if there's anything that came to his mind that he thought would be cool to mention.
Yeah, no, I think, can you guys all hear me?
Yep.
Yep, perfectly.
Yes.
All right, great. I just want to say thank you to Bill for a great presentation. I think you covered everything really well. Not a whole lot to add there, but just, keep in mind that Bytespeed has been a great partner for Ruckus. They are nationally focused, so they can really cover any geography. And as far as Ruckus goes, they are great support right from the beginning all the way through the process. And if you have any questions after, you deploy, they're a great resource as well for that. So we just love working with them, and I just want to thank them for their time and for presenting this material really well. Thanks, Bill.
All right, thanks, John. I guess I will hand it over to Jim here.
Thanks, Bill. Hi, Jatan. How are you?
Yeah. Hey, Jim. How's it going?
Good. Let me,
Good to see you as always.
yep.
And thank you as well for doing this, Jim. We appreciate
Oh,
it.
no, my pleasure. So by way of introduction, I'm Jim Kerr, a an E-rate consultant to service providers and manufacturers. So I guess the caveat always is I cannot assist you in your E-rate application process, nor do I intend to. I'm here to kind of just point out some things that we think are important as far as the E-rate process and some latest news and best practices. So news and updates. There was a notice of proposed rulemaking a couple of years back regarding a E-rate bidding portal. There's been no movement on it. It's still kind of dead in the water, and we hope it stays that way because it would be problematic for all parties concerned, we believe. If you're not engaged in the cybersecurity pilot program, the clock is ticking. You need to get your 484 application in prior to November 1st. We don't have any additional dates on the program, but that's it. The Form 44 is due by November 1st, end of day. So clock is really ticking. Year two of bus Wi-Fi. Most 2024 applications have been approved. It was a pretty neat year, kind of a learning curve for everybody. They've streamlined the process for applying. It was kind of painful last year. You had to input a lot of manual information. They've streamlined it with a drop-down menus directly for school bus Wi-Fi. So it's in there. It looks like it's working, and we didn't see the influx of applications that we thought we would see. There were only a little over 500 last year, but they are getting approved, and they're doing it pretty expeditiously. So just FYI. Wi-Fi hotspots are newly available or eligible this year. There's $90 per device and a $15 per month limit on the expenditures, and it's 20% of your student population is your kind of like your budget, so that you can only support 20% of your student population with these Wi-Fi hotspots. 2025 is year 5 of the Category 2 budget cycle. In other words, use it or lose it. If you have Category 2 budget remaining and there's anything on the eligible services list you're contemplating, I would make sure that you buy it. Otherwise, it's going to come out of your 2026 through 2030 budget, and who knows what that's going to hold. Last bullet point is going to kind of point to what that's going to be. So in preparation for that, making sure that you have that, know what it is and how much you have to spend, and have kind of planned strategically for it, is highly recommended. We expect the eligible services list to be consistent with prior years. I've seen the draft. Their reply comments to the draft are already due, and so we think that they're going to ratify it. Fairly normal timeline, typically November, along with the window announcement. They may, do the typical FCC stuff and delay until the last minute, and then 30 days, like early December, put it out there. But it looks like it's pretty consistent with prior years, with the exception of Wi-Fi hotspots. Again, we think it's going to be a normal 471 filing window, opening early January and closing end of March. And then a couple of best practice things that we really recommend. If you're applying for Category 2 internal connections, we're begging you, please apply for basic maintenance of internal connections and managed internal broadband services. We're seeing a lot of line blurring from the FCC/USAC as how they're processing these applications. And we see them include things that are under support, that should be under basic maintenance of internal connections, where they get included in the internal connections. The application will actually get approved all the way through to a funding commitment decision letter with that support in the line item detail for an internal connections, as an example. And if you didn't apply for basic maintenance of internal connections on that same Form 470, then any kind of transactions you have for support are going to become ineligible at some point in time, particularly when your partner service provider, Bytespeed, goes to submit their invoicing and they can't get paid on it because it has a line item that has support. And then they have to come back to you and ask for that money. It's very uncomfortable, and we can fix it early on in the process. You or your consultant, if you use a consultant, but it's fixable early on in the process if you apply for basic maintenance or MIBS in your application, particularly basic maintenance. And then so there's Bill kind of alluded to Wi-Fi 8 down the road. We look at the standards bodies and what's going to life cycles and a lot of other strategic things for our clients. And we see Wi-Fi 8 as probable in this next funding cycle. In other words, the 5-year budget cycle that's coming up starting in 2026. At some point towards the end of that cycle, in other words, mid 27, 28 timeframe, and into and very robustly, much like what we're seeing today with Wi-Fi 7, more and more robustly. It was new last year. Wi-Fi 7 is becoming more de facto standard type stuff. And then next year, you'll see everything's going to be Wi-Fi 7. And then going forward, Wi-Fi 7, we're going to see that same cycle coming in for Wi-Fi 8. The problem with Wi-Fi 8 is it's super fast. It has some really cool capabilities, but the educational space is one of the on the forefront, cutting edge of utilizing information in the classroom and disseminating that information, video content. We see holographic content coming, all kind of VR headsets. Imagine a classroom with 30 students with VR headsets on trying to connect to a Wi-Fi network. That's the kind of thing we see and envision coming down the road. To do that, you're going to need Wi-Fi 8. And when that happens, Wi-Fi 8 is not going to be supported by your current copper backbone or excuse me, copper horizontal cabling. In other words, from the closet to the classroom. There's going to be power requirements that are going to be coming into play as well. These things are starting to be taken into account within networks, and we're seeing some robust application stuff that's happening within the switching and cable infrastructure stuff. But copper is not going to be the standard going forward as far as your horizontal cabling to these access points. So start to think about implementing robust campus cabling infrastructures that include single mode fiber. Bottom line, it's going to require single mode fiber. If you're buying switches this year, buy the most robust switches you possibly can. Literally in your closets, you should be looking at putting in extensive course type switches with multi-gigabits. I mean, big backbone switches in your closets. Because if you want to future proof yourself, I would be going in that direction. And then demos and proof of concepts. And I got a whole page dedicated to this. Boil it down to if you're doing demos or proof of concepts, they're great. We're not saying they're not okay. It's just that you need to be careful of them. There's been a lot of back and forth between USAC and the vendor community and the end user community. I think it's be careful. All right. If you have a demo on site during your 470 window, and you're not giving that opportunity to all parties concerned, it could be considered a competitive bidding violation. USAC back in 2019 actually had a training slide and for compliance, and they actually said it was limited to 14 or 15 days during the 470 process as a rule. Well, it's not really a rule. I'm not saying it's a rule. It should, but you should kind of be very careful of how you utilize that during that competitive bidding window for those 28 days. And if it's on your site longer than 6 months, it starts to look like a gift. So be very careful. And with that, that's what I had to say. I know I said a lot really fast, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jim. And I guess you be able to send that to me and I can send it to everybody with updates. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Totally. Awesome. I think that should be it here. I don't see any questions coming through. Bill, anything that comes to mind kind of before we give folks back a couple minutes here?
No, I'd just like to say, thank you for joining in. If you guys do have any questions on Ruckus specific, or even, just talking about designs and what you guys do, if you need any, predictive mapping or anything like that done, you just want to see those type of things, let us know. We can work with you on that type of stuff.